The best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be. I'm John Renton with every Bret Hart WWE SummerSlam match ranked from worst to best. 11 matches to cover from the Hitman's glorious career, taking place at the biggest party of the summer. And I would argue that Bret Hart belongs on the Mount Rushmore of Mr. SummerSlam. While not every match has been a classic, because even Bret Hart, my favorite wrestler of all time, I might add, can only do so much when the creative just isn't there and they do some bullshit finishes. He's delivered way more classics than not classics. And he would be on there and a few others would be on there. Who's on your Mount Rushmore for SummerSlam? Let me know in the comments. And also, let me know your thoughts on the match rankings in the comments and what you think of Bret Hart's standing as far as the legacy of SummerSlam. Also want to say I'm going to have a few other SummerSlam ranking lists because it's the biggest party of the summer. So let's talk about the worst one. It's him teaming with Team WWE against Team Nexus of SummerSlam 2010. It was nice to see Bret Hart come back from nostalgia and everything, and let's be perfectly honest, that Mania 26 match against Vince was just fucking abysmal. He was U.S. champion for a cup of coffee before relinquishing it because, well, he couldn't take any goddamn bumps because of all the health issues, and he was part of Team WWE, even though apparently it was supposed to be Ricky Steamboat, but he suffered some sort of injury, or was it a brain aneurysm? It was something, but he was taken out and they put Bret Hart in. He didn't get to do all that much, and he got DQ'd after, hitting somebody with a chair. Because, again, he couldn't take bumps, and even if he could have, in the condition he was in, he really shouldn't have been doing that. So he was out pretty quickly, and it was obviously the worst SummerSlam match in the Hitman's career, but he was well past his physical prime by this point. Now we get to number 10 versus Doink at SummerSlam 1993. So, Doink was a really good character. I mean, Matt Bourne was the best Doink, but even other incarnations were better or were good as far as entertaining the fans, but the evil Doink, Matt Bourne's evil Doink was really goddamn good. And in 1993, he was delivering some stellar matches on Raw. There was like a 2 out of 3 falls match against Mario Jannetty that I remember really enjoying. And there was just some really, really good stuff. And he was in the place of Jerry Lawler. Jerry Lawler had an injury, and this was not going to be the blow-off after Jerry Lawler had literally crowned Bret Hart at King of the Ring 1993. So, the Hitman and Doink had a decent match, well wrestled enough, but obviously Jerry Lawler was faking the injury and caused a DQ, so Bret won. And then we go to basically number 9, because the match was what it was, but it was more of an angle match. And then we go to number 9 versus Jerry Lawler right afterwards, where Lawler had hit him with a crutch and had done all this stuff, and then basically got beat up after, Bret made his comeback and locked on the sharpshooter and won, but then because he kept holding on to it and wouldn't relent, basically punishing Jerry Lawler for the fact that he's Jerry Lawler and the fact that, he fucking deserved it because of this angle. And I'm just saying, as far as that, Bret wanted to get his revenge, so Lawler actually ended up, coming out the victor, so to speak, but he was, crawling backstage because Bret really cinched up on that, as he fucking should have, because Bret was always better than Jerry Lawler. So anyway, that's basically it right there. Then we go to number 8 versus Isaac Yankem, DS at SummerSlam 1995. SummerSlam 1995, where they had to suddenly make Shawn Michaels versus Razor Ramon a ladder match for the Intercontinental Championship to basically get anybody to buy the goddamn show that was headlined by Diesel versus Mabel. They thought that was a match that somebody wanted to see. Poor Diesel having to carry Mabel, who just, bless him, he was a talented big man, but he just didn't understand necessarily how to throw that weight around properly and kept hurting people. But this is about, well, Bret facing the future Kane, the evil dentist. Gee, it's amazing that Kane was able to, be reincarnated, if you will. Wow, really had to shoehorn that pun in there. It's amazing that he was actually able to get to the Kane gimmick because he was Kane, or he was Isaac Yankem, then he was the fake Diesel, then he finally became Kane. Now, to be fair, Glenn Jacobs did the best he could with this, but it was a stupid goddamn gimmick. Oh, he's not with the program, pal. It's because Vince was really starting to lose money at this point. It's amazing that Vince lost so much money in 1995, considering that he had such great ideas like this, and T.L. Hopper, and The Goon, and, pushing Mabel as King of the Ring. But anyway, they had a good match. It was good for what it was, but it wasn't the best contest that these two could have had. And it did end with shenanigans, because of course it fucking did. But it was what it was. He would continue to feud with Isaac Yankem and Jerry Lawler into, I believe, October of 95, and then would win the WWE Championship back from Diesel, ending the nearly year-long reign of Diesel being the worst drawing WWE champion of all time, at least at that point. But it was good for what it was, but it wasn't necessarily the classic it could have been. Because Kane, I'm just going to call him Kane, but, Yankum was still trying to find his way, and the gimmick was, of course, shit. But we move on to stuff that's much, much better with number 7, with Jim Nadhaar as the Hart Foundation versus Demolition for the tag titles at SummerSlam 1988. Really good stuff here. This is when tag team wrestling was king in WWE, the golden era. Even though there were some good tag teams in the New Generation era and stuff like that, and Attitude Era, by the time they got to the Attitude Era, things got a little bit what it was. Now, I will say that they had a better match a little bit later, but as far as Demolition, here comes the ass, and here comes the Snatcher, I think that's how that goes. They got to have, a really good contest here. Hart Foundation were, great baby faces at this point, having, gotten away from Jimmy Hart, and they had some good stuff here. This was a really, really well-worked match with, great tag work, as you would expect, and obviously we would have to hold off for a couple years before the big, big win for the Hart Foundation over Demolition, but this was a great match. And at least it ended unlike the Rougeaus versus Bulldogs match that opened up SummerSlam 88. Yeah, that ended in a double countout, the first match on SummerSlam. In its history, it was a great match, but seriously, a double countout, or a draw, what the fuck. So anyway, we go to number 6, with Jim Neidhart, again, as our Hart Foundation versus the Brainbusters, Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson from SummerSlam 1989. Yes, all this in my goddamn veins. Yes, please. I imagine they have better matches on house shows. We don't really get to see those unless somebody taped that stuff and they leak it out on the internet, the information superhighway. Why I'm doing the quotations, I don't know. But as expected, these two teams, phenomenal chemistry, great stuff. Heel, babyface, great dynamic, and you could not ask for really, two better teams at this point to do some great stuff at SummerSlam 89 before we got to the main event that had Hogan and Beefcake against Savage and Zeus, the late Tommy Lister, or Tony Tiny Lister. I'm sorry for screwing that up. The Fifth Element president, may he rest in peace. But this was great stuff, well worked. I loved it, and if it hadn't been for some of the other matches, this would have been ranked a lot higher. But that's when we're getting to the really good stuff. Pretty much from 7 on up, we're getting to the classics because Bret was just that goddamn good, whether in tag teams or otherwise. Speaking of tag teams, teaming with Jim Neidhart as the Hart Foundation versus Demolition. 2 out of 3 falls match for the tag titles at SummerSlam 1990 when they finally won the tag titles and the Legion of Doom basically stopped the interference and stuff like that. This was Bill Eadie's, one of his last appearances, I believe. Because then he had various injuries. He was a lot older. And Darso and Crush would carry on the Demolition tradition, which is really hard to say, for a few months, I think, after Mania 7. Was it Mania 7 or SummerSlam 91? I think that they were basically done after that. Because I know they wrestled at Mania 7. But anyway, great stuff. The dynamic of, could they finally overcome Demolition, who had been pretty goddamn dominant. Tag Team Champions of Mania 4, Mania 5, Mania 6. And they were faces of Mania 6, and it had suddenly turned heel again because they were going to go into a program with the Legion of Doom. That didn't last very long because the Legion of Doom were being featured as the new guys coming into the company. But it was great stuff, though. The Hart Foundation winning the tag titles would hold them until, they were only supposed to hold them until they dropped them to the Rockers at that Saturday night's main event, but that ill-fated taping had the rope snap, and instead of on a taped show, not live, fixing the rope, just taking a minute to fix the rope, they decided to just keep doing the stuff. The referee didn't know what the fuck he was doing. And the Rockers won the match, won the tag titles, and then they didn't air it, so that just never happened. And then so basically the Hart Foundation held them from here until Mania 7, when they lost them to the Nasty Boys, and then everybody took the Journey route and went their separate ways. True love will define you. No, that's not how the lyrics go. Let's move on from the butchering of Journey lyrics to number 4, this may be controversial, versus Owen Hart, steel cage match for the WWE Championship at SummerSlam 94. Now, why is this number 4? Great match. I would argue pretty much it won, and it would be right at the top as far as match quality. Now, here's the reason I'm putting it here. And I love this match. This should have fucking main event. It shouldn't have been Undertaker versus Undertaker. Don't worry, I'll talk about that on another list. Bit of a spoiler there. But goddamn, as great as this was, and it was, I fucking miss Owen to this day. The great chemistry that him and Bret had, obviously being brothers, that doesn't automatically translate to great chemistry in wrestling. They did some great stuff. Technical wrestling with some physicality. That friggin' hard as hell blue cage. I sort of watched. It was ridiculous. But I would argue that this match did more for Owen than it did for Bret. That's not to say that it didn't establish Bret as being a guy that would take down his brother. He would do whatever. He'd be fighting champion. I think it did a little bit more for Owen than it did for Bret, because Bret was already well established. Owen had beaten Bret at WrestleMania 10. Terrific opener. One of the best openers of all time. Maybe the best opener of all time at Mania. So that's why I'm ranking it here. But the match is really fucking good and just really phenomenal cage match. Phenomenal work by both guys. Miss Owen to this day, as I said. Bret and Owen created magic here on this night. That's why it's number 4. Number 3, versus Mr. Perfect for the Intercontinental Championship, 1991 SummerSlam. Perfect had a really bad back injury. Bret's told this story before, and I'm not going to really get into a lot of the details beyond Kurt really had that bad back, but wanted to do what he could for him. And also, Heenan was no longer his manager. It was Coach, who was, John Tolos, who great territorial wrestler in his day, but being the coach, it was just goddamn ridiculous. Bobby Heenan retired from being a manager, and it was great stuff, though. You wouldn't have known that Kurt was hurt, except you could kind of see the pain on his face, but maybe he was just selling it. It was just that goddamn great. But eventually, Bret got the sharpshooter on, won the Intercontinental Championship, and, there he was. He was off to the races right there. And it was great stuff. Perfect would take over a year off from the ring, I think. He wouldn't come back till Survivor Series in 92 because he had that bad back injury. But really, really good stuff. And Kurt wanted to make Bret, and boy, did he ever, because he respected him a lot. Number 2, versus Undertaker for the WWE Championship at SummerSlam 1997, with Shawn Michaels as a special guest referee. If Shawn didn't call it down the middle, he would be fired. But if Bret lost, he wouldn't be able to wrestle in the United States again. So obviously it telegraphed that Bret was going to win. And Undertaker had the championship from Mania 13 in that, shall we say, questionable main event of him versus Sid. But Shawn lost his smile and had a knee injury and didn't want to drop the title to Bret. Because at the time, and Shawn's cleaned up his life since, he was, as some may say, a screaming motherfucking pilled up asshole. But he has cleaned up since then. Now, Shawn being the ref, it built a good dynamic because Bret and Undertaker always had great matches. There was that natural feud between Bret and Shawn that had been doing the promos back and forth a bit. I'm trying to remember the timeline. I don't remember if the Sunny Days thing happened here. Not here, but I mean before this, or if it was just after this. But anyway, what would happen is, terrific match, as you would expect, well worth being in the main event slot. And what would happen is Shawn would accidentally hit Bret with the chair that Bret tried to use because Bret spat at him. Oh no, Undertaker gets hit with a chair instead. And then Bret covers and Shawn has no choice. 1, 2, 3. And he's upset. And then Bret becomes champion for a few months until the Montreal Screwjob that I'm not going to go into here. And Shawn would enter into a feud with The Undertaker that would pretty much climax with the iconic Hell in a Cell. And then would climax more with the casket match where Shawn hurt his back. So anyway, I question some things about Shawn Michaels' career. Can you tell? But terrific goddamn match. And then we go to number 1 versus the British Bulldog for the Intercontinental Championship. SummerSlam 1992 in Wembley Stadium. Wembley Stadium, easy for me to say. Maybe there's multiple Wembleys. I don't goddamn know. But British Bulldog, this has been told by Bret, he wasn't in the best shape. Forgot all the spots, and Bret always went over the stuff and imagined the match. And Bret basically had to carry Bulldog through all this, who was not in the best state. But he did, and you wouldn't have known. Even with Bret going back, and telling us about this, yeah, you can maybe pick out a couple things, but Bret was so goddamn smooth. Bulldog was a natural. When he was on, he was really fucking good as well. But Bret, basically carried Bulldog here. Bulldog did his spots, and then Bulldog got the victory, with the roll-up, 1, 2, 3, family drama, exploding in Wembley. And that was it. Intercontinental Championship, to the Bulldog. And then Bret would go on to win the WWE Championship just about 2 months later at a house show in Saskatoon. I'm sorry, that's a stupid name. All due respect to anybody from Saskatoon. It sounds like some offshoot Looney Tunes stuff from the dollar store. But anyway, yes, terrific goddamn stuff from the Hitman, and that's all I gotta say about that. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Retlin. I'll see you soon.